Okay, good morning everybody, and welcome to all of you. Really good to see you at the beginning of a new academic year, so Happy New Year. What I want to do this morning, I'm going to talk to you, I think, probably for about 25 minutes, which will probably turn out to be 30 minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit backward facing about achievements, where we are, but mostly I want to look to the year ahead. And what I want to do in the course of the presentation is to talk to you about some of the things where I think we're doing well, some of the challenges internally and externally we're facing, and I'd like to give you a sense of what I think the university's priorities are for the year ahead. I want to be realistic, and I hope that in most issues I can be positive and reassuring. I'm going to start. We turned this off, didn't we? To preserve the battery. Sorry about that. Right. I'm going to start with some headlines. So last time I talked to you, which is in May, we were anticipating Philip Auger's review of funding, looking at a significant shift in resource, we thought, from higher education to further education. Well, they say a week's a long time in politics. 4 months on, uncertainty and chaos prevails. Auger review was published, and I think has promptly been filed into a very large box in the Department for Education. It's not necessarily completely dead, but as you know, you don't even need to tell you, the country is in the grip of a constitutional crisis, revolving door of higher education ministers, and I was just looking as I wandered out of the lecture theatre at this morning's Supreme Court hearing up on the screen. And I could spend the entire time this morning talking to you about political turmoil, and I'm not going to do that. What I do want to do is to reassure you that we have a Brexit working group, chaired by Richard Calvert, with representatives from across the university staff, students looking at our supply chains, looking at our region, looking at all the scenarios. We believe that we have stress tested all our preparations for outcomes on the 31st of October. We think the serious challenges for higher education do not come on the 1st of November. They come further downstream. I might come back to that later. But I think we're in as good a shape as we can be for what we face. I read a story in the papers last week that one university said they were stockpiling toilet rolls. Can I just reassure you we've checked our toilet roll supply? If I press a button, something really interesting happens to this screen. And I think every time I press it on rehearsal, if only it were that easy. I want to look back now on last year, and the headline I want to start is the 86% figure for student satisfaction that we achieved in the National Student Survey. In fact, 86.48% of our students were satisfied overall with the quality of their course. If 10 more students had ticked the box, it would have been 86.5% and rounded up. So, I want names. We were significantly above benchmark in really important parts of the survey, including quality of teaching, learning opportunities, assessment and feedback, academic support, learning resources and voice. The consequence of that figure was that we are now comfortably in the top 30 universities for student satisfaction. We are expecting at the end of this week some really good news, partly as a result of that. I want to thank everybody for the contribution that they have made. Just teaching, high quality teaching is day in, day out work that makes the difference. And I want to say particularly thank you all for the hard work that went into earlier reassessments this year that has given our students clarity about their position earlier than ever before, and I think helped contribute to the positive impact of the sense that students are at the centre of what we do. So really important for me to say congratulations, but even more important, thank you. I want also to look at our work on research or creating knowledge. Last year we saw £17 million of new research awards, more than double the previous year. That puts us into a really strong position. It's really good timing for the bottom line on that slide for the research assessment exercise. An achievement on that scale, again, the result of really hard work right across the university. Some highlights: the Extending Excellence in England bid has given a multi-million-pound award to Lab for Living for work on design-led research looking at the 100-year life and designing living and working environments for long life. There'll be a new design for Ageing Academy to increase links with the local community. We've secured second phase funding for the Sheffield Innovation Programme through the City Region Growth Hub that will deliver applied innovation support to more than 200 businesses across the city region over the next 3 years, building on the work we've done with 150 businesses on the first phase of that. The Creating Knowledge Implementation Plan has awarded £1.3 million for 96 projects across the university, including 12 Chancellor's Fellowships that recognise and support outstanding research, 25 research groups and clusters, 10 Innovation Fellowships. Those are real investments that will continue in the new academic year. We are a long way on with our Research Excellence Framework preparations. We are expecting that we will return 500 staff to REF 2021, a figure which is double that for 2014. The REF Code of Practice that we've now had approved will be used to identify staff with significant responsibility for research. All eligible staff as having significant responsibility for research on the census date, which is July 31st next year, will be returned to the REF. Something that I'm really proud of is the work that we have done on the La Trobe partnership. I was at the UK conference last week. I talked to the General Secretary of the Association of Commonwealth Universities. She thought this was one of the most deeply rooted, in terms of breadth and depth, partnerships she'd heard described. It's taking off. There's good progress on student exchange, on collaborative research and joint provision. A study abroad programme is being developed with La Trobe, across institution to institution, cross-university mobility agreement from September 2020. Nursing and sports management students have already spent time at La Trobe, and we've welcomed La Trobe history and architecture students here for a summer programme. And we are seeing research success as a result of this. We won $1.8 million from the medical research dollars from the Medical Research Council of Australia for dementia research between Hull, La Trobe and Swinburne universities. This is work we couldn't have done without the depth of the La Trobe relationship. And I was delighted this year we welcomed Andrew Harvey, Director of the Centre for Higher Education, Equity and Diversity Research at La Trobe, who's given a sold-out lecture on widening participation, looking at the Australian and UK experiences. Recruitment and admissions this year, 3 shots there of clearing day. We took 2,800 calls, 390 staff right across the university involved, and a team of trainee kitchen staff served hundreds of bacon butties. Really important to say, you will know, we'll talk about demography a bit later, the university decided to hold its threshold entry requirement for degrees at a slightly higher level than last year. That's led to slightly increased numbers of students being admitted to foundation years, but it looks as though we're going to come out of this year's clearing and admissions round in a strong institutional position against budget. We set our targets a little bit lower, reflecting the demographics, and we think that we have met our targets. We won't entirely know that until students arrive, but it looks good. International students also look positive. Applications are up. We will admit at least as many students as last year. Again, that's not entirely certain until enrolment has taken place. And last week's announcement from government introducing the 2-year post-study work visas for international students should enable us further to accelerate our work on international. In terms of postgraduate taught, we expect 14% increase in PGT numbers. Applications were up, still a very fast-moving position, but on international and PGT up, and we're holding a strong position on undergraduate recruitment. So putting those things together on research, on teaching, on international, on applications, we are in a strong position as a university. What I now want to do is to look slightly outside at some of the external challenges. I'm going to segue from there into the priorities for the year ahead. So I want to start, I'm going to pick out 6 issues that underpin the university's financial position. I suspect that for some of you these will be pretty familiar. But one of the consequences of political turmoil is the continuing fee freeze on home undergraduate fees. And that means that for our main market, for the bulk of our budget, we are working on fixed prices across our provision. At the same time, whilst we can set our own fees outside home undergraduate, we are looking at cost increases running at around 3% a year, maybe 2.5%, maybe 3% a year across our staff and many of our non-staff costs. So we're looking at fixed prices against rising costs, and that clearly poses a challenge for us and for every other university. We look at our student number planning for 3 years. The demographic decline, the reduction in the number of 18-year-olds continues through to 2021. There'll be fewer 18-year-olds next year than there were this year, and we've taken a prudent approach to our student number planning. I know that not all our peer institutions have. So that poses a set of really tight issues for us over the next 3-4 years. We know that across the university, our students, the students who arrive in 2 weeks' time, at the end of this week, the students that arrive at the end of this week were mostly born in the year 2001. They are digital natives. James Johnson and I were with the students, some alumni, including an alumni from the 80s and 90s, and a student who graduated in 2015. And the students from the 80s and 90s were talking about their memory of technology, and they said, of course, there was no Wi-Fi. And the 2015 graduate said, what? There was no Wi-Fi. But assumptions about technology and the need to invest for our staff and our students remain important for us, and technology inflation is probably running ahead of that 3% figure. The market is tightening, consequence of the demographic dip, but also of some increasing number of alternative providers coming into the system. Coming to university is, to use fairly crude language, a buyer's market. Competition for students is tough, and some of our competitors have been offering degree courses with extremely low entry tariffs. We have taken a decision that it does not make sense for this university to go to very low entry tariffs. We think that is negative for students and negative for institutional strategy. And we are working with changing student expectations around contact time, around digital learning, around additional wider support for student needs. So plotting a way forward in relation to those needs is a really tough challenge. And we have made some difficult decisions. There are some challenges. There are some incredibly seriously, and I've taken the decision that we need to do a bit of reshaping of the academic organisation in order to operate efficiently, effectively and coherently. And I'm going to talk about that in the next part of the presentation, where I want to look at the year ahead and a little bit beyond that. And what I'd like to do in this part of the presentation is to try as clearly as I can to set out what I think our institutional priorities are for this year. And if I can say that as clearly as I can this morning, I hope it gives you a sense of where the focus is, gives you a sense of what our expectations are, gives you a sense of direction, because there can always be a lot of noise once things filter through what is quite a large organisation. So we set out our institutional strategy in 2017, Transforming Lives. We have stress tested that, we've worked through that with the board, we think it's still the right strategy. Within that, we think there are 4 overarching institutional priorities for us this year, and these are they. We have to deliver long-term sustainability. That is not simply financial sustainability, it is also making us a robust, resilient and successful organisation which is well run and works effectively. It is about further building quality. I said we are now comfortably in the top 30 on student satisfaction. I don't want to be in the top 30, I want to be a lot further up in that. It does mean enhancing our distinctiveness in a crowded market, and it means extending our influence and purpose. And what I'm going to do in the next slides is to work through shaping futures, creating knowledge, external engagement, building a great university, the 4 pillars of the strategy, and just look at them in terms of those 4 priorities. So I think under shaping futures, 2 main headings on distinctiveness and quality. The Hallam model, which is our top institutional student priority, a piece of work that we kicked off back in January, which is trying to find a crisp, coherent way to describe the design principles for our curriculum. Deliberately wanted to work at pace on this, incredibly impressed, over 400 academic staff, that's 1 in 5 of our academic staff, collaborated in workshops on the Hallam model in the spring. And we talk now about 4 design principles, a curriculum that engages, challenges, supports collaboration, and allows students to thrive academically, personally, psychologically. So the Hallam model, our top priority. Absolutely understand that delivering ambitious step change is tough. We know that it can sometimes feel that we're trying to apply a blanket approach across the curriculum when the reality is more complex. This is intended to be something that stretches and changes. It will eventually apply to all academic levels and modes of delivery, but we will start with our undergraduate curriculum. The model has been and will continue to be developed through engagement with staff and students, and the Hallam Model Steering Group will shortly be sending out invitations to a big internal stakeholder event on the 21st of October. Over 100 staff and students will be nominated from faculties and directorates across the university to test early proposals, to identify dependencies, and to help us shape further the distinctiveness. The second piece of work that I think we need to kick off this year is a systematic look at our portfolio. A portfolio review group with senior leaders from across the university has been working over the last 4 months to look at our future portfolio, what we want it to look like, what shape, what size we want it to be. This is and will remain a large, comprehensive university. But it's a long time since we had a look at our portfolio in a market which is shifting, a systematic look at the portfolio in a market which is shifting rapidly. In terms of quality, I identified 3 priorities. Outstanding teaching and learning is at the core I've talked about the NSS results. We are making excellent progress. There is still a bit too much internal inconsistency. And we're not quite there in being absolutely sure that we're landing the highest quality right across the university. I know that fabulous improvements have been made across the university, and that's really good. But consistency still got to get to. I was embarrassed, we all were, that we appear to be one of the universities in the country with the largest black attainment gap between minority black students and white students in the country. There is a big piece of work to be done on closing the gap in attainment for black and minority ethnic students. We are working closely with Universities UK and the NUS on this. Buckley leading for us on that piece of work. It's an area where we do need to make progress if we are genuinely a university which drives success for all. And student mental health and well-being is the core of that slide. It's becoming increasingly obvious across the sector that students require greater support in challenging times. I think we do a good job here. We do a really good job with students who are referred through to our services. There's a little bit more for us to do on making sure that we're attending to the needs of all. I've got in front of me, I don't know whether you've seen it, a copy of My Name is Leon. This is the book that we've chosen for the Hallam Big Read. There are 15,000 copies of this book, which are branded now for the university. And it's one of the things that we want to do is to stimulate conversations with students about themselves, about what they bring. And we're going to be doing that informally and formally with our new students, first years, postgraduate and undergraduate, who've all had a copy of that. So those are the priorities on shaping futures. On creating knowledge, we doubled research income last year. Let's double it again next year. We'll snigger at that, but we do need to keep the stretch going there. There's a way to go. The doubling last year takes us back in competitive position. We've seen a decline over several years, takes us back in competitive position to roughly where we were in 2014, and there is further work to be done. The work on interdisciplinary research institutes that Roger has kicked off, Drexel has kicked off, becomes really important for us. Those two elements are important in terms of distinctiveness, and a major priority for this year will be the final run-in to the 2021 Research Excellence Framework. Under leading locally and engaging globally, I will start not quite at the top of that slide, but under distinctiveness, I've already stressed the importance of La Trobe. We've got really good evidence, anecdotal evidence, that students who've already engaged with La Trobe have gained from it. I picked up a note this week for a student who'd spent 4 weeks at La Trobe, who says, "It was such an incredible experience, I've been really inspired to do more to my degree," and talks about the work he's now going to undertake. "Thank you so much for the La Trobe opportunities. It's motivated me even more than I was already motivated." And I really want to embed La Trobes and that relationship for as many students and as many staff as possible. It does not mean necessarily vast amounts of travel, expensive and time-consuming, but there are all sorts of ways in which we can and should interact with La Trobe. We will be undertaking work this year on our civic engagement plan, civic university agreement, that will follow the city region geography. We're already making significant contribution. The South Yorkshire Futures programme of work has been shortlisted for Times Higher Award for outstanding community engagement, and we want to embed further work on the Civic University Plan, picking up the work that Bob Kerslake, chair of our board, has done on the Civic University. And we're doing more than we have done before on influencing and shaping national policy. Amidst all the chaos, there is an emerging emphasis on place, on skills, on the relationship between FE and HE, on the role of universities in the nation. I'm doing more and more work on that nationally. It has positioned us strongly. You can take this in any way that you want, but Gavin Williamson, the new Secretary of State, was sent here for an hour and a half as part of his induction as new Secretary of State. But it's a testament of that we've positioned ourselves as a strong voice in the sector, and it's where we can continue to influence and shape for good. And there's more to work to be done on that. I want to say a few words about the underpinnings, the Building a Great University pillar of the strategy. And I've got my three headings again: distinctiveness, sustainability, influence and purpose. There is investment that we need to press on with, and that we will press on with, on people, particularly the Hallam deal, accelerating and enhancing our work on equality and diversity. We've made significant progress on recruitment of more diverse staff. We've got a long way to go. We begin visibly this year the work on our estate plan. The atrium roof is replaced, and we begin to replace the Science Park building on Howard Street. The technology strategy is a really big piece of work to get us into a far more digitally enabled organisation, and work on the overall shape of the organisation, embedding the professional services operating model, and I'm going to say a little bit in a moment about the academic operating model work. In terms of influence and purpose internally, a major piece of work is for us to respond to the staff survey in March. I've got 6 task and finish groups for each priority from the staff survey, each being led by a senior member of staff, looking at communication, engagement and metrics, at systems and processes, at bullying and harassment, performance and development, at working effectively together, and on confidence in and visibility of the university's leadership team. They will be reporting back in October, and we will implement the results of that work. I absolutely get that in a time of change, there are challenges for everyone. Heard the message loud and clear, and we will act. We did take the decision during the last academic year that given the challenges that we faced, we needed to have an overhaul of the university's academic organisation, something that had not been looked at seriously for 15 years. And a piece of work led by Richard Calvert, Roger Eccleston, looking at the academic operating project, has suggested that we need to look hard at academic organisation. The faculty structure has served us well, but it's a rather expensive structure, it's a rather cumbersome structure, and it's produced differences in approach in different faculties. In times of constraint, we need to pull things together. I think we need a much more strategic and focused shape of leadership from the top. So, have restructured the university's leadership, which now looks a little bit more like this. Myself, Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic, process to which I was delighted. We appoint Roger Eccleston after a strong national and international search. Deputy Vice-Chancellor Strategy and Organisation, Richard Calvert. Roger will work fundamentally with 4 cross-cutting Pro-Vice-Chancellors, one for teaching and learning, one for academic partnerships, one for business engagement, and one that we are currently recruiting, you will have seen the advert on the university website, for research and innovation. Deborah Harry is Chief Finance and Planning Officer, and giving a sharper focus to our work on people and estates, a Chief People Officer and a Chief Estates Officer. And then the delivery part of the organisation, colleges and research institutes, and professional services. And that's intended to be a tighter and more strategic senior organisation. And I've put it up both because I want to emphasise that explain the rationale, but also to be clear that change is a feature, I think, at all levels of the organisation. AOP consultation is underway and there's more shaping to be done on that. I want to end, almost done there, with 2 more slides. This weekend, almost 7,000 new undergraduate students will be arriving in the university. We are here for them. Underneath all of our priorities are our students. We are committed to transforming lives through shaping futures, creating knowledge, leading locally and engaging globally, and building a great university. And I've got 2 things on this slide. One is a photograph. I like that photograph of some of our students at the very end of last academic year. And the other is a quotation. And the thing about I like this quotation for a couple of reasons. The first is, I really like what it says. Here's a student who wasn't sure, but it was the way that we engaged with the student that persuaded him to come here. The other reason I like this is that this is a quote from the Chief Operating Officer and Registrar of one of our competitor institutions. So I really like it. And so this is a slide I do want to end on. A reminder that our students are at the centre, that the evidence that we have is that we are making exceptional progress to being the sort of university that we want to be, that it is a journey, that there are ups and there will be downs, there are challenges in change, but we are moving the university to where it should be, at the leading edge of UK higher education. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do now is to invite you to explore any issues that I may have talked about, anything you want to explore. I'm going to do my best to draw in answering those questions Richard Culver, Roger Eccleston and Deborah Harry. I'm going to say when you do put your hand up, please wait till the microphone comes before you ask the question, because we are recording this and we want to capture what you're saying. And I'm just going to do what I always do at occasions like this. I'm going to ask you just to spend 30 seconds talking to your neighbours about anything that I've talked about, anything you want to raise, because my experience is that just tends to get the questions going with a bit more fluency. So 30 seconds talking to your neighbours, and then we'll pick up questions. go to, yes. Sorry, near the back, sorry.
Hello. Thank you for your talk, very positive and practical. I'm interested in consistency and one size fits all, and what do we mean by consistency and things like that. Can we empower subjects, disciplines, course teams, whoever, to do what they need to do to be excellent, or do we need to have a sort of one top-down quashing any individual?
Okay, I'm gonna give that one to Roger.
Well, thank you for the question, Peter. The answer is, of course, some combination of consistency and providing that local opportunities to be innovative and find the best solution within the context of a discipline. And this is something that Alison and I, as Alison's moving into a role as PVC Learning and Teaching, have spent quite a lot of time discussing. Is moving to a position where the default position is to focus on the desired outcomes, and how those outcomes achieved are then the business, if you like, within departments, within course teams and so forth. Having said that, there are cases across the university where we have introduced consistencies that are neither innovative or support the efficient delivery of good teaching and student experience for the students. And as we go through the introduction of the Haller model, as I say, the default will be to say, well, how can you implement this innovatively? But we do need to get that tension right with ensuring that we're consistent and efficient in how we implement it.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Hi, thanks. I've got a question about the technology strategy. You've talked about the importance of students becoming technology capable, but also about staff. And I'm just interested to know a little bit more about what the plans are for both staff and students.
I'll ask Richard to respond to that, if I may.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right to say that one of the things that we've sometimes done in the past as big institutions is think about getting the kit right or the systems right, rather than thinking about how do we best exploit them. And one of the things that will be very high on the list this year, which is not so much a technology-led piece, but led from the people side, is working on staff capability and thinking about how we use systems. Chris has already alluded to the fact that lots of our students are much more tech-savvy than lots of us are. And we also need to think about not just what systems we put in place, but how do we train and develop staff and get them familiar with them. So I think, yes, some of what we'll talk about in the tech strategy is about the systems and the technology, but increasingly it has to be about the people side of it and how we support staff and students as well, actually, to make sure they make the best of the system. So yeah, I think very, very good point.
Okay, thank you. There's a question down the front. You're right, I'm sorry, you have to find it in the next question.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the course leader ULT meetings that we put in SDA. I don't know whether there were anywhere else.
Yes,
Christina Hughes brought them into power, and then they suddenly stopped. I found them very interesting, very engaging, very useful. Is there a possibility that those will be brought back?
Well, I can just answer that very quickly, because I signed off a course leader forum timetable last week. So the short answer to that's yes.
Okay, it was specifically with the ULT in front of the course leaders.
Right.
So it was
sorry,
two extremes of the university, one the rock
Right.
face and one...
I'm going to have rogering on that. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Well, what I have been doing over the last few weeks is going around department leadership teams with also with the Vice-Chancellors, and that's to ensuring that we're having those detailed discussions with department leadership teams, and as we continue that process, we will be engaging with course leadership with course teams as well. I think we all four of us are very keen to ensure that we really understand the opportunities, the challenge within departments, within course teams. So yes, there will be those opportunities.
Thank
send a mic up to the back.
David Wren from the Business School, but a Sheffield resident as well. Simple question. 7,000 students will turn up this weekend, but in actual fact 70,000 students will turn up for here and up the road. Does the university have any sway over the council to not close Eccleston Road on what is probably the busiest day of the year?
Okay, so there's a short two-letter word in answer to that. It's pretty unfortunate that we've got both universities arriving and the Sheffield 10K this weekend and the Sheffield United home game. Had a conversation with a colleague in Nottingham, who they've got exactly the same students arriving, and Robin Hood half marathon in Nottingham. It's pretty frustrating, it doesn't need to happen, but it's going to be a bit of a pain this weekend, I'm afraid. If you want to move around Sheffield, I think I'll probably use a bike this weekend. Sorry about that.
Hi, can you say a bit more about the timescales on the new college structures and what's happening over the
Sure.
sort of the next year, plus any longer term plans for moving departments or subject groups around in between the college structures?
Okay.
As Chris has already mentioned, we're in a period of consultation for the senior level structures in the colleges. So as we go through that process over the next few weeks, we now have the Deans of College appointed, as you'll know, the assistant dean roles, heads of roles in colleges, and as we get those senior roles in place, we can start to transition to the new colleges. We'd expect those to be in place at the beginning of January. With regard to structures of departments, I propose that we don't actually undertake further change in departments other than that the college leadership teams might consider they need to change as part of the normal course of managing the business of the college. So there is not, as part of AOP, a further change to departments that is currently scheduled.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that then. Could you say something about the timeline in terms of the research institutes getting up and going and when's that going to happen?
Yeah, well, I think those of you who've heard me talk about research institutes, I had said that we wanted to proceed with the research institutes at a faster scale than we have done. Now, in the end, it became clear that the most sensible way of doing this was actually to establish the research institutes at the same time as getting the senior structures of the college right. So that's why we're now in the process of appointing to the research institute directors through this level of consultation alongside the assistant deans for research and the other assistant deans. And similarly, once we've got those roles in place, we can move forward with establishing the research institutes.
Sorry, Mike, I just didn't catch you. Sorry.
Okay. It kind of relates to the last question, but one. It's about the academic operating plan and then the portfolio review.
Mm-hmm.
So with the portfolio review, is the intention that's going to align with potential shifts in lower structures, or can you tell us a little bit more about how those things are going to mesh together?
Well, inevitably they mesh together. I think the important thing about the portfolio review is it doesn't restrict itself to just being implemented through the college structures. Whatever, in the end, the college structures are just that, organisational structures. And inevitably, some provision will and should involve collaboration across and between college structures. So although they're happening at the same time, there is not a hardwired interdependence between the two.
Can I just sort of type the transition from faculties to colleges is not simply about a change of name. Sorry. Transition from faculties to colleges is not simply about a change of name. That would be just daft. And we need to get to a far more departmentally based university. And it sort of relates to that first question about one size fits all. Legitimate variation between subjects, between disciplines, really important. But now I look back over where we got to, there were simply too many unexplained variations between different faculty approaches. So the colleges should be far more porous, far more light touch, far more strategic, with departments shaping and responding to the markets that they are looking at. And that's a really significant shift. There should be some cost saving, but it is that devolution of responsibility and accountability closer to the front line. You need some intermediating structure in an institution this size, but that's the shift.
Just add to that.
By all means.
And I think just to add to that, I think one of the things I'm quite really excited about actually as we've formed the team, Deans of College and the PVCs, is that there's clear enthusiasm for all working together. And I think when we look at the portfolio, when we look at other aspects of operation, to have the Deans of College working closely with the PVCs with portfolios, I think that is going to provide that clear, coherent leadership.
Yeah, by all means, ask a second question.
Well, a totally different subject, but on research, when I started here, we would fund PhDs through GTA and things like this that were wholly funded by the university. And now we seem to be a lot of the time doing these that are part funded with industry and things like that. So my research is in higher education practice, and as far as I'm concerned, we are the industry. So I think we should fund the other half. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to find a company who's going to fund that research. I have colleagues who do very important underpinning research that isn't directly commercialised, and things like that. So what are we doing sort of just, is anyone going to get a PhD student scholarship in the future?
Deborah, do you want to talk about underlying finances here?
Shall I just answer the specifics about GTAs? I think you're right. Of course, there are some advantages of GTAs in partnership. One, of course, it halves the cost of the student, and it also has been really important in us allowing us to establish some important partnerships. So there is a preference towards joint funding GTAs. However, it's not a hard and fast rule that the only GTAs we're going to fund are in partnership. So I think good cases, as long as they're within the budget where there's provision, then they will be supported.
Do you want to say anything? No. Right. Any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Yeah, right at the back.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could flesh out the portfolio review a little bit more. What's your approach to that? What sort of metrics you're going to be thinking about, that kind of thing?
Do you want to do that one, Richard?
There's a set of things that the team that Linda Mason and Linda's over here has been working with both colleagues from faculties and colleagues from across professional services to step back and look at firstly, what do we understand about changes in likely student demand? And so looking at the external environment, what are the areas where we may see increasing interest and demand for provision? What are the areas which potentially are starting to look a little bit tired now? So there's a perspective on this is what is happening more broadly in terms of what potentially students are looking for, what are employers looking for, what are the changes in the external funding environment. We've also been looking, it ties in a little bit with the civic agreement, about how does our provision fit with provision from FE colleges, and how do we create collectively an educational landscape that works for young people and employers in the region. So that's the kind of context for it. We've then gone through a set of metrics looking at what is our current provision, looking at all the core indicators in terms of what's performing well in terms of recruitment, how we're performing in terms of the underlying metrics. And then there's inevitably a process of trying to put those two together and see, firstly, Are there any key messages from that in terms of the mix of levels of provision? So looking at the mix of undergraduate, postgrad, different levels, potentially level 4, 5, foundation and so on. And also looking at particular subject areas. And one of the things which perhaps Roger might say a little bit more about is, are there some areas where we need to think in a more in a kind of cross-departmental, cross-subject area way about the kind of provision that might work in future. So it's that kind of big picture in terms of what's the external environment, in terms of demand, but also the supply side. How are we performing? And then looking at what does that tell us about the kind of provision we ought to be putting together in future. Roger, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think that's right. I think that the work of the portfolio up until this point gives us that picture about demand for portfolio, demand of our students and so forth. I think to come back to Chris's point about where we stand as a university, which is we've made excellent progress. I reflect on that. We've got ourselves into the peloton, and really, in order to pull ahead of that, we need to do the stuff that is about distinctiveness and quality. So I think we take the work that's already been done on the portfolio review and then project onto that. How can we, working across colleges, as Richard's already mentioned, getting the balance of the portfolio right, ensure that we are actually providing a portfolio that is distinctive, provides that and that high quality provision.
Any other questions? If not, I'm just going to say a couple of things by way of conclusion. First of all, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for 10 really interesting questions, and a couple of those I think with some granular challenge that we need to make sure we pick up. I started with that set of headlines from newspapers over the last few days. It's really difficult to remember a time in my adult life when the external environment in terms of policy and politics looks more complicated and more fragile and more unpredictable. Against that background, the stats that I was able to put in front of you, doubling research income, increasing student satisfaction already at a very high level, is, as Roger said, positioning us strongly in a pack of universities. My ambition for this university is that we build on what we've done and we pull ahead. And we can do that. Change is tough, I absolutely understand that. The staff survey told us we need to do a little bit more hard thinking, hard listening, and we will do that. But we're in a really strong position. For the next year, we can turn that into an outstanding position. If we do that, not because of what I've done, because of what you've done. Thank you very much. It's great.